Silence in a relationship is almost never peace. When a woman stops arguing, stops complaining, and stops asking for your attention, most men make the catastrophic mistake of assuming things have finally settled down. They believe the storm has passed. They are wrong. In human psychology, loud emotional expression is a sign of investment. Anger, frustration, and intense conversations mean she is still fighting for the connection. But when a woman experiences a complete absence of true emotional closeness for months, her psychological defense mechanisms trigger a quiet, systematic process known as emotional detachment. She does not make a dramatic scene. She does not give ultimatums. Instead, she quietly reclaims her emotional investment, creates an invisible barrier, and begins adapting to a life where you no longer play a meaningful role. By the time most men realize what has happened, the decision was already made months ago. Today, we are analyzing the hidden behavioral shifts that reveal when a woman has silently checked out on the psychological reality behind why it happens. There is a profound difference between peace and psychological absence. When two human beings build an intimate connection, their neural pathways become accustomed to sharing emotional states. They mirror body language, seek validation, and rely on subtle micro-interactions to reinforce safety. However, when emotional closeness disappears for an extended period, the brain responds to that neglect as a form of social pain. To shield itself from perpetual disappointment, the mind initiates an automatic coping strategy: emotional numbing. The first subtle indicator of this transition is the elimination of emotional friction. When a partner who previously voiced her concerns suddenly becomes completely agreeable, it is rarely a sign of harmony. It is a sign of surrender. When someone ceases to challenge you, it means they have calculated that the emotional energy required to address the issue yields zero return. They stop attempting to bridge the gap because they no longer believe the bridge can be built. Human behavior is governed far more by bodily micro-expressions than spoken words. When intimacy collapses, the body betrays the mind long before a single word of farewell is spoken. Consider the physical space between two people. In a healthy dynamic, touch is spontaneous, light, and frequent a casual brush of the shoulder, an unprompted touch of the arm, or prolonged eye contact. When emotional detachment takes root, these micro-touches disappear entirely. If physical contact does occur, its quality fundamentally changes. It becomes mechanical. A hug becomes polite rather than lingering. Eye contact is broken swiftly after answering a question. Observational psychology reveals that when a person feels emotionally disconnected, their physical posture naturally shifts away from their partner. In social settings, their feet, torso, and facial orientation subconsciously angle toward exits or other individuals rather than toward their significant owner. They are physically remaining in the room, but their nonverbal cues indicate they have already removed themselves from the dynamic. The second major psychological shift involves the sudden emergence of total self-reliance. In a thriving relationship, individuals lean on one another for emotional support, decision-making, and daily problem-solving. This interdependence creates mutual value. But when a woman encounters months of emotional distance, her brain adapts by building complete autonomy. She stops asking for your advice on her life decisions. She stops sharing her small daily victories and minor struggles. She handles her stress independently, confides exclusively in friends or family, and creates plans for her personal future that do not factor in your presence. To the untrained eye, this looks like healthy personal growth. In reality, it is a risk mitigation strategy. By removing her dependency on you, she ensures that your presence or eventual absence will no longer affect her emotional stability. She is effectively building an internal life that operates independently of the relationship. The fourth subtle behavior lies in the structural degradation of communication. Notice the nature of your conversations. When closeness is present, dialogue contains depth, vulnerability, prospective dreams, and emotional disclosures. When detachment sets in, communication becomes strictly transactional. Conversations flatten into logistical updates. What time to pick up groceries, schedules, domestic obligations, and superficial pleasantries. Questions about your internal life disappear. She no longer inquires about your stress, your passions, or your feelings, because asking requires emotional capacity she is no longer willing to spend on the dynamic. When you speak to her about your life, her responses become politely passive. She listens, nods, and offers polite validation, but the deep, empathetic resonance is gone. You are talking to a compassionate observer, not an emotionally engaged partner. Where attention goes, psychological energy follows. When a woman shuts down her emotional investment in a romantic partner, that dormant energy must find a new outlet. She may suddenly pour hyperfocus into her career, personal fitness, creative hobbies, or social circles. Her calendar fills up rapidly with events that do not include you. While personal growth is inherently positive, when it occurs alongside an absolute lack of intimacy at home, it serves a psychological function, distraction and replacement. By immersing herself in outside achievements and external social bonds, she fills the void left by the absent romantic connection. This allows her to experience emotional warmth, validation, and fulfillment elsewhere, further neutralizing any remaining need for the relationship. The final sign is the complete loss of relational anxiety. In the early stages of emotional distance, a partner feels anxious, seeks reassurance, and makes attempts to repair the bond. But after months of unaddressed distance, anxiety turns into total indifference. She no longer becomes upset if you cancel plans. She no longer shows jealousy or concern when you are distant. She simply does not care. Indifference, not anger, is the true opposite of love. Anger proves that an emotional connection still exists, even if damaged. Indifference proves that the connection has officially dissolved. If you recognize these behavioral shifts, understanding them is only the first step. Human connections are dynamic, and patterns can be rewritten, but only when the reality of the situation is faced without defense or denial. True reconciliation requires stepping past comfort, acknowledging the long-standing emotional distance, and actively choosing to rebuild trust and presence from the ground up before the final threshold is crossed.